Hello and welcome back to my channel. For those of you who have been here before, you know what my channel is about. I do tarot readings. I am an intuitive tarot reader, and I also do astrology readings. I'm not a professional astrologer, but I have been studying astrology for a long time, and I do intuitively pick up on astrology as well. So this is my intuitive interpretation of what is happening within the astrology today. And today is the day of the full moon lunar partial eclipse that's taken place in Capricorn. It took place earlier this morning, so about 05:43 minutes UK time. Before I continue, I would just say as well, thank you very much to anybody who's new to my channel, who's come over to check out what I do. Thank you very much. I do appreciate it. Could you, if you like my videos, please thumbs them up and also tap the bell to receive the future videos that I will be putting out. For astrology, I do the new moon, the full moon, and I do any of the major shifts of the planets and the energies that are happening as well. And also, could you subscribe to my channel if you haven't already? For those of you who have subscribed, thank you very much. And for those of you who have subscribed recently, I really do appreciate it as well. Thank you for helping to make my channel grow. So I will continue with my astrology reading, which I will be reading off of my laptop because I've taken my notes that I have intuitively, as I was saying, kind of written down, and then I put them onto my laptop. I put them into a blog, and then I can also read them because there's a lot to remember. So starting off, we have the divine masculine energy, which is the sun, and that's opposing the divine feminine energy during a full moon. The sun and the moon are opposing each other, and it's happening today, or it has happened today, at 13 degrees and 37 minutes of both Cancer and Capricorn. Moon in Capricorn, sun in Cancer. And this is the third eclipse of the eclipse season cycle. And it's a partial eclipse because the moon's node is not close enough for it to become a full eclipse. So it says, as with all full moons, it is opposing the sun, who is found at the same degree in Cancer. What makes this full moon lunar eclipse particularly important as well is that it is going to be the last one in Capricorn until 2028. So we won't see another eclipse in Capricorn for 8 years. That's quite a long time. So it's worth checking out your own natal chart to see which house this is taking place in, as this will give you insight into what is going to happen for you on a personal level as well, because this reading is much more of a general, collective, overall energy read. There will be a free natal link in the description box down below for you to go and have a look at your own natal chart as well. All you need is your time of birth, your place of birth, and I think that's it, time and place of birth, and you should be able to work out where this is taking place for yourself. So the divine masculine energy, which is the sun in Cancer, is still in the home sign ruled by the moon, while at the same time, because it is opposing the divine feminine energy, the moon is in Capricorn. And if you remember last new moon, we had the eclipse, the solar eclipse that took place still in Cancer at the 00 point of Cancer. So the moon, the sun is still in Cancer. And the sun is shining a spotlight and highlighting all the Capricorn energies this time, as the activity that is still taking place, while both the sun and the moon are being balanced out through a T-square with Chiron. So the moon is in Capricorn, but she's not there on her own. She is joined by Saturn, who has returned recently, as I will talk about more, and also Jupiter and Pluto. So there is a lot of activity within the house of or the sign, should I say, sorry, of Capricorn. And Capricorn is the 10th house as well, so it's all about our kind of structure, our work ethic, our established systems, all that kind of thing. This is a powerful releasing and healing energy. On one end of the seesaw, we have the sun, representing the masculine ego, drive, action, and father. On the other end, we have the moon, representing the feminine, the emotion, the passivity, and the receptivity, or the receptiveness, and the mother. And in between both of this seesaw, at the kind of pivot point of this seesaw, if you like, is Chiron, also known as the wounded healer. Now, as this is an eclipse, the moon is about to become occulted or hidden by one of her nodes, the south node, which is sitting at the 28 degree and 22 minute mark in Sagittarius. Interestingly, we have the sun in Cancer, the sign of the mother, the caregiver, the nurturer, and the place of the universal womb, safety and security. While the moon in Capricorn is in the sign of the father. Traditionally, the financial provider, family protector, worker, and builder. Those are the kind of traditional roles of both the mother and the father. So the Capricorn energy is much more about the masculine and the father energy, and the Cancer energy is much more about the mothering energies. And interestingly, they are both in their opposite signs. So once again, the universe is showing us how it feels to stand in each other's shoes, as well as to be able to accept both the masculine and feminine energies within ourselves. Unfortunately, though, these energies are out of balance and have been for a long time. So just like during the solar eclipse 2 weeks ago, it is now the moon's turn to have her light dimmed, which ultimately is the light from the sun. The moon doesn't have any light at all, it's only the light from the sun that we see. So the south node is cutting off a partial part of that light. The south node itself is about what we need to let go of. It is the past. Interestingly, so is Cancer. It shows us where we have reached a point of finality, of no return, where there is no more growth to be had in a certain section of our lives. This full moon is drawing and demanding our attention be focused on all this Capricorn activity, allowing us to release and let go of the old that is no longer feeding, nurturing, and nourishing us on a soul level of growth. In order for something new to be allowed into our lives, both individually and collectively. It is also interesting to see that our next new moon will once again be taking place in the sign of Cancer at the 28 degree mark. So we are going to have 2 new moons in Cancer this month. While opposing the trio in Capricorn, we are not done with this energy yet, nor is it done with us. Here once more, what we are being shown we need to free ourselves from, is the old structures, the established systems, the governance that no longer works for us, the law system that is outdated and only works as a business on the lower levels, and as a system of corruption on the higher levels for corporate interest. The outmoded and past their best ways of earning a living, the hierarchy that keeps these systems in place, and last but not least, the monarchy, probably the most outdated system of all. No matter how hard they try to modernise themselves, historically they have become defunct. And I feel that that's going to be quite a big issue coming up as well over these next 6 months or so. Capricorn is ruled by Saturn, planet of restriction, constriction, limitations, and keeping the status quo at all costs. He is the lord of karma and time, the ruler of the last of the 3 earth signs and the last planet we can see with the naked eye. As such, he also rules the physical domain, the skin and bones of our structural body. Having just moved back into his home sign, now at 29 degrees 46 minutes, he is once again making up the trio with Pluto and Jupiter, all 3 being retrograde still. The Capricorn energy is strongly back in our awareness. Pluto and Jupiter have just recently met up for the second of their 3 conjunctions at 24 degrees. The deeper, transformative and evolutionary energy of Pluto being given another magnifying boost by exuberant Jupiter, bringing into the light from the depth of the underworld secrets that have been kept hidden and are yet to be revealed. Again, something that I feel is going to become very relevant over the next 6 months as we move ahead, because eclipses do last for 6 months and we have had 3 eclipses all in a row. So there is a lot of energy shifts. There is a lot of things that are literally going to come out and be revealed over these next 6 months, even kind of a year's time as well, that we will still be working with these energies. They are really powerful energies. So what started in January on the 12th, 2020, with the Saturn-Pluto, or as I like to call it, Platon, conjunction, is not finished by a long shot, especially as Pluto will be hitting that 22 degree point where 2 days prior to the conjunction there was a Cancer lunar eclipse at 20 degrees. Now, 6 months later, we are experiencing the opposite. And Jupiter is also going to retrograde back to the 20 degree point as well. So Pluto will reach the 22 degree point where the Saturn and Pluto conjunction happened in January when they came together, and Jupiter will be at the 20 degree point of where the Cancer lunar eclipse happened 2 days prior to Saturn and Pluto meeting up. So again, big shifting energies, big clearing out, big transformations are still to come. The Capricorn energy with the South Node there for the last 18 months was showing us what was no longer working for us. This full moon partial lunar eclipse is going to be bringing the point home over the next 6 months. However, as this is just a partial eclipse, I feel as though we are being told we cannot completely turn the other way and dismiss totally everything from this patriarchal system. We need to rebuild with balance and understanding from the importance of both of these energies working together, neither being seen as more valued than the other, in order to find the harmony and the balance that we need. To bring in the matriarchal qualities that have been denied within this Capricorn created system for far too long. So the patriarchal system is out of balance because it has been very much created on a very masculine idea of how the world should be, and it is very much to do with, in some ways, the kind of mindset, the thinking brain, rather than the kind of emotional, feeling, intuitive energies of the matriarchal mother moon energy that has kind of been dismissed and ignored and kind of shoved aside for so long. That there needs to be a balance. It needs to kind of come back together for there to be unity, for something new to be built on both of those energies working together. And I feel that this partial full moon eclipse in Capricorn is kind of clearing out a lot of that Capricorn energy that is dead, that is no longer working for us, that is no longer, like I say, nurturing us or feeding us or allowing us to grow spiritually and kind of evolve on a soul level. And it's also why I believe that at this point in time, not only do we have the sun in Cancer and the moon in Capricorn, but we also have at that T-square point Chiron, the wounded healer, as the balancing point to these opposing and juxtapositioned divine masculine and divine feminine heavenly bodies. And Chiron is sitting, as I was saying, at 9 degrees and 25 minutes. Chiron is healing the deeply felt wounds of the masculine and patriarchal system that have been passed down in both the female and male psyche from generation to generation within a soul level, cellular DNA depth. So this system has become so ingrained in many ways. It's not just the female psyche that suffers, it's also the male psyche that is suffering as well, because it's kind of backed itself into a corner and it kind of has nowhere else to go in many ways, except to become more and more restrictive and more dominant in many ways. So it's kind of both energies that are kind of needing to break free from this. It's not just a masculine thing, it's not just a feminine thing, it is within both of our psyches. And it is deep, it is deeply ingrained, because it's something that has built up over centuries and centuries and centuries. So it's kind of this, although it may just appear as something that's, you know, being cleared out from 20 years or whatever, it's kind of, this is deep. For me, I feel as though this is historically deep. So an interesting note is that if you count 9 signs from the sign of Cancer, which is known as the universal womb, you get to the sign of Aries on the zodiac. So from Cancer right the way around to Aries is 9 signs, and Aries is kind of seen as, or is known as, the new energy, the newborn. It's kind of being reborn because it goes over the 0 point of the zodiac, the very kind of last point of the zodiac being 59 degrees of Pisces before it moves into the 0 point of Aries. So once it gets to that kind of last point of Pisces and moves into Aries, it's new, it's a new beginning, it's a new start, it's a newborn idea or energy. So okay, so that brings me neatly into the next planet that is connected to this T-square energy, which is Mars itself, being conjunct Chiron at 4 degrees and 14 minutes. Mars has recently crossed over the 0 degree 00 point of the zodiac, also known as the Aries cardinal point, also known as the axis mundi or the world stage. And this point is very important because it's a point, it's also the same point where the solar eclipse just took place as well, because it's across cardinal cross, which basically is the signs of Aries and Libra. 0 point of Aries, 0 point of Libra, 0 point of Cancer, and 0 point of Capricorn. So if anything crosses over those points, any of the planets that cross over those points, or asteroids or anything, we will see it work itself out on the world stage. We will see it kind of manifest on a bigger scale, rather than just kind of in our personal lives. We will see it play out on the world stage as well, which is kind of what we are seeing at this time. So yeah, so that point has, like I was saying, it was previously activated by the new moon solar eclipse at 00 degrees of the point of Cancer. And now Mars has kind of reactivated it again as well. And with Mars being conjunct Chiron and this kind of independent energy, I feel, of the Mars planet itself in Aries is going to kind of really start to bring itself to the forefront. So Mars being back in his home sign of Aries and moving along fast, having spent 5 weeks in the watery, dreamy world of Pisces, while being forced to relinquish his warrior self, ego, to the higher frequency of unconditional love, Pisces, 12th house. It almost felt like a mini retrograde, with long periods of inactivity, not feeling motivated, and completely exhausted at times. And I also think it's got a lot to do with why we're seeing so many people on their knees as well. It's like Mars was literally kind of soul searching, and like Pisces relates to unconditional love, it relates to spirituality, it relates to the subconscious realm, but it also relates to the kind of need for forgiveness as well, and compassion. So, and we've seen a lot of outpourings of that happening, and Mars activity has kind of been quite subdued. It's almost like the warrior himself has been kind of subdued, because there hasn't been a lot of fighting back as such. It's all kind of been from one side at this time. So that's interesting. We haven't really seen the warrior stand up and take his place yet. Mars is now fired up and ready to lead the charge on his new 2-year cycle around the zodiac. The first planet, technically an asteroid, that Mars encounters is that of Chiron in a T-square with both the divine masculine and feminine energies, which places his energy into the mix and adds an extra emphasis on the metamorphic transmutation that is taking place within the masculine psyche, especially in the sign of Aries, the first masculine sign of the zodiac. And it's a very masculine sign. Mars represents the masculine itself, like we're saying, the warrior nature, the courage. That doesn't mean that it's just a masculine sign, because women do also have that energy, but it's also, it depends very much on how it's used as well, and where it is in the placement of your natal chart as well. But in the sign of Aries, with Mars being in his home sign, it's like all those attributes of Mars are being activated, literally. All the attributes of Aries and Mars together is kind of really bringing it out, and it is going to be seen a lot stronger over the next 6 months. So Chiron is healing those deeply wounded aspects from this lifetime, previous incarnations, as well as generational. These include the identities, characteristics, beliefs, opinions that have led to the ingrained actions and conditionings which have been passed down for centuries, particularly around such issues as men always having to appear to be strong, emotionally, physically and mentally. In short, having to be known as the strongest gender, as well as the provider, which has put them under a huge amount of pressure, stress and burden. In Aries, this connection with Chiron is an ego healing of massive proportion on a very deep and psychological level. And I tend to kind of think of the kind of Victorian era as well for this as well. The kind of, you know, big boys don't cry, boys don't, that whole kind of separation of the masculine and the feminine that really took place. I feel like boys wore blue, girls wore pink. That whole idea, you know, what were little boys made of, what were little girls made of, that kind of separation of the masculine and feminine energies within the whole was very much kind of pushed to the front within the kind of Victorian era, and women had to behave a certain way and kind of like meek and mild if we were going to become like marriageable material. It was that kind of influence, I think, that kind of has really brought this whole very masculine driven kind of corporate, because we had the Industrial Revolution back then as well. In many ways that kind of has added to it, because mostly it was men driving that idea home as well. And of course abuse of the planet, the Mother Earth energy as well, which the corporate industries kind of still carry out today as well. And the corporate energy is very much Capricorn energy. So, sorry about my nose, it's a bit runny again. It tends to do this a lot and itchy. And there's also, while I was writing this, I got this kind of feeling, and Mars is related to the blood. It's related to the flow of the blood, it's related to blood in general, the colour of the blood. Mars is the red planet, blood is red. There's a kind of connection between the two. And while I was writing this, I was getting the feeling of it even kind of cleansing the blood on some level as well. That this is with Chiron there, so close to Mars, and this is going to be quite ongoing as well with Mars and Chiron. That there is this kind of cleansing happening on a deeper level as well. And it was kind of a feeling of dirty blood here as well. And I wasn't quite able to understand it, but it felt like it could be possibly related to ancient families and the use of something that's called adrenochrome. And I don't know how many people have heard of that. And it's not a word that is kind of used that often. But if you haven't heard of it, then I suggest you go and look it up and find out about it. I'm not going to go into it here, but it is something that is used amongst the rich and the famous. And also, it could also be connected with the rich who are not so famous as well. And there is a lot of them out there too. Not so well-known families, but I feel as though this could suddenly appear openly on the world stage, that this idea, this thing around blood, something to do with blood, the use of blood, is going to kind of become highlighted on the world stage over the next 6 months or so, possibly even sooner than that. So after having been subdued for so long, Mars is about to become the star of his own show. As from the end of July, he will be making some major, intense connections. When he reaches 13 degrees, Mars is going to start coming into conjunction with Black Moon Lilith. Now, Black Moon Lilith is the point of the dark side of the moon, the side of the moon that we never actually see as it moves around the Earth. It is that point that we never see, but it is called Black Moon Lilith, and it's connected with all things sinister and not particularly pleasant, but I will talk about that later. But anyway, so I just want to give you a quick kind of rundown on what Black Moon Lilith is. But at the time Mars comes into conjunction with Black Moon Lilith, Black Moon Lilith is already making squares with Pluto and Jupiter. and has been since mid-July. So once we get to mid-July, Black Moon Lilith is going to start making these squares with Pluto and Jupiter. And then just after, Mars is also going to conjunct with Black Moon Lilith. And as that conjunction progresses, he too will begin to make squares with Jupiter and Pluto as well. About 4 days later, okay, so yeah, about 4 days after he's made the conjunction with Black Moon Lilith, he will start to make conjunction with Pluto and then with Jupiter. So both of these planets are going to continue their long ongoing sextiles with Neptune. So Jupiter and Pluto are still going to be in sextile to Neptune at this time as well. So we're going to have Black Moon Lilith conjuncting Mars, squaring Pluto and Jupiter. Mars is then going to come along and also square Jupiter and Pluto. At the same time, Jupiter and Pluto are going to be making sextiles over to Neptune. So there's a lot of activity happening there. Neptune is also retrograde in her home sign of Pisces and is still in that kind of 12th house energy of confusion, delusion. So basically I've put, talk about a potential for eruption. Black Moon Lilith is an erupting kind of energy, and so is Mars as well. So Mars kind of activates and erupts things. And a Black Moon Lilith has got a lot to do with kind of poison. Neptune has a lot to do with kind of plague. Viruses are ruled by Neptune as well. And so there's also, I feel there can be at this point an exposure of dirty little secrets coming out as well. I feel that this is going to be quite a hot point of our year. Of the year 2020. So it says, could we see something rise to the surface that has long been kept hidden under wraps behind the allowed narrative? I believe we could. We could also see some dangerous physical earth activity, possibly volcanoes. Interestingly, one has just erupted recently in Japan as well, I've recently learned. But personally, I feel this is more about some very dark, sinister secrets that could be so explosive it will rock the world to the core. So much so that it could also cause more explosive actions, possibly as distractions from the truth, in order to counteract the enormity of what is being revealed. So what is being revealed could be so huge and so damaging to certain groups of people, shall we say, that to counteract this, to counterbalance it, they could cause something else to happen somewhere else in order for a distraction, so that the other thing becomes much more important, and hopefully for them, whatever it was that was originally kind of revealed will not be seen as being so relevant, because everybody's attention will then kind of be distracted onto something else. I'm not saying that's definitely going to happen, I'm just saying that it is a possibility, as this is very explosive energy. Black Moon Lilith represents the dark side of the female psyche, and all those things buried in the dark. The things we know on some deeper subconscious level are happening, but we are too afraid of the consequences of our discovery to want to look there. She is the shadow side of our human nature that we ignore, that develops in the dark and grows until it becomes a grotesque monster that is allowed to exist on the periphery of our world. A succubus that feeds off our fears, and it needs to keep us in constant fear and ignorance in order for it to survive. But just like the vampire, it dies when exposed to light. Again, the vampire and blood, I still feel that there is a connection going on here. When she meets up with Mars, this is a red hot recipe for all kinds of disasters. Confusion, delusion and mass hysteria, as well as a rerun of what we have just lived through for the last 6 months. That could also become highlighted again and used as the distraction, but this time it could even be 10 times worse. So this could be something that has like added extras to really kind of put the fear into people. So add to this mix Mercury in opposition to Jupiter and Pluto, while he also squares Mars at the same time. Mercury trines Neptune. So all of that was going on previously with Black Moon, Lilith and Mars and Pluto and Jupiter squaring and sextiling over to Neptune, and at the same time we have Mercury who is opposing Jupiter and Pluto, while he also squares Mars energy, and at the same time Mercury is also trining over to Neptune. That's a lot of energy. So as if this isn't enough for us to contend with, and it really should be, we can add to this Saturn in his home sign, bringing in the most draconian rules and measures, smashing that hammer or gavel down on anything and everything that is outside of a certain way of thinking, that doesn't fit a certain agenda, being pushed on what is still on the whole an unsuspecting world. This is going to be a time of enforced crackdown by a very corporate run system. So basically the more this energy falls apart, the tighter the grip is going to become. The more they realise they're losing control and losing power, the more they're going to try and hold on. And it kind of came to me in this kind of vision of all our options. So it's like nothing that we're going to ever have experienced so far today. If we think that we've seen draconian measures already with what we've been through, it's not going to be anything compared to what's going to come in, as our options are going to become more and more limited, particularly around the social media scene as well. And as Saturn in Python-like grip wraps its restricting and constricting coils around us tighter and tighter. And that was kind of the vision that I saw, was kind of this big kind of Python-like snake wrapping itself around the world and just kind of squeezing tightly. Fortunately for us, Mars in his home sign is now feeling more like an empowered hero, returning to the battlefield. And we may find more and more warriors and warrioresses joining him there. Aries is the first house of the zodiac. It relates to our entry into the physical world as a new and creative source energy. In zodiac, or metaphysical terms, it is about having left the non-corporeal realm of the 12th house, formless state, of being and taken on physical form, for the non-corporeal energy spirit to become corporeal, in which to experience the world of matter in solid form. As such, for me, the battlefield here is about our rights as a human sovereign being, to be allowed to make decisions and choices for ourselves. It is a battle for self-identification, of the individual's will versus that of the corporate will. The right for autonomy to be able to choose all decisions for ourselves versus that of the large corporate entities that have no connection with us as individuals and yet assume the power to control our lives. This battle is only going to get more intense as Mars will almost get to the end of Aries before he turns station retrograde on September the 9th at 28 degrees. On his journey to this point, Mars will be meeting exactly with Black Moon Lilith on August the 10th. As they are both squaring the big trio Saturn, Pluto, Jupiter, both Mars and Black Moon Lilith will at this time be conjunct Eris, the goddess of discord, disharmony and rioting in the streets. So it's just going to get even more intense because Eris is going to join that whole jigsaw, that whole whatever you like to call it, kind of big cauldron pot of kind of energies of all these different planets aspecting all these each other, and Eris is going to join in. And like I was saying, Eris is the goddess of discord, disharmony. She doesn't want unity. She wants herself to be known. She has been out on the outskirts for a long time, and she is disruptive. She is a disruptive asteroid, now the planet, who took over from Pluto. Or she was a dwarf planet originally, but when she got discovered, Pluto got downgraded immediately. So she initiated this discord and this disharmony amongst the astronomy field as soon as she was discovered. She was like, I'm here, and everything just went up in the air. Literally everything. It was like, we can't have another planet because that's too many planets. So what are we going to do? And there was a lot of disagreement, and eventually the people that discovered Eris just announced her as being the 9th planet and saying that Pluto had to be downgraded to a dwarf planet. But Pluto is the lord of the underworld, and you don't just downgrade the lord of the underworld and expect it to just kind of change that whole dynamic. So at the same time as this is happening with Eris, she's also directly aligned with Pluto and has been for a while now, and is going to continue to be right the way through the rest of this year. So personally, I do feel as though this point around about the 10th of August is going to be quite a strong pivotal point of 2020. And I will kind of talk more about that in another astrology video. But I do think that, like I've written it, you know, it's a red hot explosive handle with kid gloves energy, and it is fraught with the potential for all kinds of danger points individually and most especially collectively. So I feel as though it is a point where things could become very very easily disturbed. The balance could very easily be upset within the power struggles as well. There could be power struggles, there could be countries vying for supremacy. It's that kind of energy. So coming back to this full moon partial eclipse, we find Mercury at 7 degrees, 26 minutes, and he's retrograde still and conjunct the Sun. Having just cazimid, which means the heart of the Sun, across the face of the Sun, Mercury is only 0.2 degrees away from reaching his shadow point of 0.5 degrees, where he will station direct on July the 12th, before turning and journeying forward for the third and last time over that same spot in the sky. So Mercury in Cancer has been reassessing, reevaluating and revisiting our inner dialogue around the issues of our past and memories of family, home, childhood, safety, security. All areas which are very relevant at this time in our lives. And we also have to remember that we recently had the North Node in Cancer, and our attention has very much been on the home. And just as the North Node was kind of getting ready to leave Cancer was when we all ended up getting put into lockdown as well. So that I find very interesting. And so now Mercury is there going back over kind of on a more mental level, all of this kind of ideas. And so we may have been finding ourselves feeling very nostalgic when it comes to comparing them to today's surreal world as well. So we may have been kind of finding ourselves looking back over the past and kind of wishing or hoping that, you know, things could go back to how they were previously and how simple things were back then, even though back then isn't that far away. But compared to what we're living in today and the surrealism of it all, and you know, somebody saying to us that this was going to happen, if somebody had said to you last year that you were going to find yourself in a lockdown in your home, not being able to go to work, having to wear a mask every time you left your house, etc., you would have thought that person was absolutely crazy and you would have just totally ignored everything that they had to say. But here we are. And it's kind of, you know, saying, let's look back. Let's kind of look back on where we've come from in that sense. So also Mercury, as he moves forward, is going to begin to rewrite that inner dialogue. As during this full moon, Mercury will be letting go of the old stories, memories, the clutter and baggage we carry in our minds and have stored away. It is time to clear it out, and the sun is helping to shine a light into those dark and cobwebby corners while bringing in some clarity. Here, the watery, sensitive, gentle, caring energy of Cancer is saying time to wash away the harsh, painful, emotional memories of the experiences of the past. Helping us to do this is Venus in a semi-sextile at 7 degrees in Gemini, reminding us that although it may at times seem a brutal and uncaring world out there, beyond the limits of our perceived control, we can allow ourselves to feel safe, secure and loved within the confines of our own minds. And to do so, all we need to do is change our inner dialogue and the way we communicate with ourselves to a tone of kindness and gentleness, giving ourselves permission to be thoughtful and considerate in the way we talk internally with ourselves. Also, Cancer is about trust as well. So we are also being asked to question what it is that we trust. Do we trust our own thought processes? Because Gemini is the twins, the duality, the two sides to a story, as well as the two different narratives we can run in our mind. One is based on the negative, which is fear-driven, and the struggle for our survival. And I see this as the trickster energy that we can quickly get caught up in. And I've talked about this previously as well in my other videos. I've talked about the trickster energy of Gemini, and also the fact that we now have the South Node in Gemini as well. I feel that this is kind of very much going to be an energy that's going to be at play around us quite a lot of trickster energy out there, but also a lot of trickster energy within ourselves as well, within our own heads. So we, as I was saying, we can quickly get caught up in it without even being aware of the fact that we are caught up in it, which can lead to places of self-sabotage. And the other energy is the positive, that even in a negative situation allows you to see and understand the potential growth within the adversity, and to remain in a place of joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, and faith. This is the magician energy. It takes conscious thought to stay in that higher vibration. Ultimately, it is about which one we decide to feed. Both of these thought patterns are created by our emotions, which is why during these times of such uncertainty, for me, it feels like the universe is saying to us, this is your choice. This is where you get to create the world you wish to live in. I feel this is of heightened importance at this time, as the North Node is also in Gemini for the next 18 months. Sorry, my arrow doesn't seem to be working very well. I'm lost where I am. Where are we? Like all our decision making is going to be based off of our thought patterns, and they are anyway, but I think somehow it's going to become more kind of prevalent or relevant to us because of this North Node. And depending on where they are somehow at this time, that's our thought patterns, where we're putting our thoughts, whether we're putting them into that negative energy or whether we're allowing that kind of negative background voice, if you like, to just continually keep playing in our heads, and where it takes us is going to make a difference in our future, both individually as well as collectively. So it is about kind of realizing where your focus is. Where are you putting your attention when it comes to your mind? Where are you running that dialogue, or that like a reel in the back of your brain, if you like, that just kind of does its own thing? It's kind of being aware of it and bringing it into conscious awareness, and then kind of trying to take it out and put it into something, another place. And so every time I do that, it goes down instead of up. It's very annoying. Okay, so do we choose to live in fear or love? Maybe the days ahead we should ask ourselves this question internally and affirm our answer often. We need to remember to be compassionate towards our past and forgive ourselves, and move forward into a new future where we can make new memories. With a sense of our inner healing and knowing our self-worth, as Mercury in a square with Chiron is asking, do we know ourselves and our own minds? How much of what we think is just regurgitated from someone else's opinion and understanding? How much of what we still think is fact is no longer so, but we still cling to what is familiar? And that is part of the process of the kind of the running of the mind as well, and kind of questioning ourselves as to, is that my thought or is that somebody else's view of the world or idea, or it's kind of saying it's time to really question your own thought process and where it comes from. So Venus is also making herself felt here in a semi-sextile, supporting this re-emergence of a newly cleansed Mercury. As she sits in the sign he is the ruler of. We are also learning to scrutinise how important it is exactly to be able to make decisions in our lives, good or bad, wrong or right. They are our choice to make, in order to be able to create a healthy value system of our own understanding that feels good to us as individuals. Gemini may be the sign of the twins, but even twins have differences. So I kind of feel that it's saying that like we're needing to put things under the magnifying glass in many ways. Gemini has that kind of scrutinizing element to it. It wants to kind of make sense of things. It wants to compartmentalize things in some ways. It's Mercury ruled. It's very quick thinking, but it also needs to understand things on a kind of, you know, taking things apart and putting them back together kind of level. It kind of wants to get to the bottom of things in many ways. It's kind of Mercury energy. And so, and it's also reflective energy as well. If you think of Mercury like being mirrors, you know, mirrors are made from Mercury, from the quicksilver, fast-moving, running energy that is kind of made solid in a mirror where we look and reflect at ourselves as well. So that could also be part of this process of the mind as well, the reflection of the mind. But it is a very dual energy, very much to do with duality. And Venus, I feel as well, is kind of you know, she's saying that it's important that we know how to value ourselves and our thinking processes, and not just accept from something from outside just because we don't want to put the work in, or we don't want to kind of research or learn about something, so we just accept it, you know, because somebody else has told us, somebody who we may have put on a high esteem maybe, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're right. So that's also that kind of thing as well, that, you know, we need to be able to evaluate things for ourselves and make our own decisions. But the input of Venus doesn't end there. As at 07 degrees 05 minutes, now on her return journey, having recently turned direct, Venus has been making a sextile with Chiron, which will be ongoing for the next 5 days, so 5 days from now, becoming exact on July the 10th, continuing on until July the 16th. In all, this transit will last about a fortnight. So it's an ongoing process with Venus and Chiron coming like sextiling energy, supportive energy. Venus is also going through a deep transformational process related to our early experiences with relationships. In Gemini, this corresponds with our younger school days, up to mid-teens, and the minefield that is known as relationships, be they intimate or friendships. Chiron is helping us to heal from the rejections, the hurts, the betrayals, the painful experiences connected with these wounds that we have carried around in our hearts from our first tentative explorations into the nothing is certain, nothing is set in stone, mutable world of Gemini. So the early experiences that we had with love and relationships at the very kind of early days of starting school up to our mid-teens. Unfortunately, Gemini is related to the mind, and the mind can be fickle and change at any time. It is ruled by Mercury, fast-moving, quick-thinking, logical Mercury. It has to make sense, and love is not about logical sense. Love is about the emotion, the feelings, the connection with another person on an energetic heart level. Sadly, though, these are not the reasons that in our youth we make decisions to become involved with someone. Youth is driven by desire and sexual passion, fired up when our hormones kick in. Often decisions can be made on what our friends will say, on how we will be judged, disapproval and approval being strong emotional incentives. So often relationships in our early days will also be questioned or valued around how somebody else will think about whoever it is that we choose to have that relationship with. What will my friend think if I have a relationship with this person, especially if that person doesn't, your friend doesn't particularly get on with that person. You know, there's that kind of, will they think I'm stupid, or, you know, there's all this emotional turmoil around relationships that start at a very, very young age, and there's betrayal and there's rejection and there's these painful experiences that we have to put ourselves through, because otherwise we will never learn, we won't know how it feels. So it's kind of that whole minefield, and I feel that because Venus has been in Gemini and been retrograde back and forwards in Gemini, that it's kind of around those energies that Venus and Chiron have kind of been healing this process, these early experiences into the world of relationships, and like I say, in friendships as well, because we can get just as hurt in friendships. So this can and does lead to all kinds of emotional and psychological scarring, which we carry forward into all our relationships in life, whether we are aware of it or not. This, I feel, is the area that Venus has been working with retrospectively, reassessing, reevaluating and healing those deeply buried wounds at a heartfelt level. Remember, Venus too has recently cazimied over the Sun. Venus too has been cleansed from the past energy holding us back from true love. And Venus too is a part of this full moon partial eclipse, connecting both through Mercury and more directly Chiron. Chiron being the balancing energy of this huge releasing T-square. Venus too is now looking to make new memories. As she is moving forward once more, Venus has revalued her wants and her needs within personal relationships, and she now knows the value of her own heart. One last planet that needs to be mentioned here is Uranus. He has just passed into the 10-degree mark and is now out of the first decan of Taurus. There are 3 decans within each sign of 10 degrees, and as the planet moves through each of those decans, it kind of matures. So by the time it gets to the 3rd decan, it's learnt more about that sign, and because of the experiences of the different transits that it makes with other planets. So it's never the same every time it goes through a decan. It's never the same because it makes different connections with different signs, etc., etc. So as Uranus has been going through the first decan of Taurus, it's kind of been a little bit neglected. So Uranus so far has not really been a major player, apart from the square when Saturn entered Aquarius. It did square Mars as well at the same time, which will be returning in a long-lasting sequel from the end of 2020. So at the end of 2020, and about December 21st, Saturn is going to move back into the sign of Aquarius and is going to start connecting once again with Uranus and squaring that energy in Taurus. Interestingly, Uranus and Saturn are both rulers of Aquarius as well. Saturn is the old ruler of Aquarius before Uranus was discovered. So the fact that they're kind of squaring off with each other is interesting. And Uranus is also Saturn's father, which is also an interesting kind of dynamic there as well. Uranus, however, is getting ready to station retrograde mid-August, and on July the 5th, during the full moon, Uranus is trining the moon while being in the middle of both Venus and Chiron, making semi-sextiles as well as sextiling Mercury and the Sun. Uranus is a maverick energy, the rebel, who just when you think you know what is coming, can send a bolt of unexpected changes. He is, along with Saturn, the ruler of Aquarius and relates to such things as innovative ideas and technology. Mercury is the little thinking mind, what we do and accomplish on a day-to-day level. Uranus is the higher consciousness, the universal mind. It is the mind that brings forth those flashes of inspiration, those eureka moments that can and do change the course of the human story. Aquarius is the humanitarian, the individual being that recognises its uniqueness amongst the collective, which is where we stand today, on the threshold of individual and collective change. And Uranus is letting us know that change is on our horizon, in a future we are creating now, and we need to be ready for some unexpected changes, even though we cannot predict anything accurately with Uranus, or with Uranian energy in general. One of these changes could involve the revealing of technologies far beyond where we believe we actually are, within the mainstream, as well as, dare I say, disclosure again. It is coming, and it is going to be a game changer. This truly is a massive healing on a soul evolutionary level. When we take all these aspects together during this full moon Capricorn energy release, it is a time of out with the old and in with the new. Even though at this time we may not even be sure of what the new is yet, but we are pretty aware we are done with the old. This gradual transformation will have a profound and deeply emotional effect on all our lives in the years ahead. So I just want to run quickly through the Sabian symbols of the degrees of where this full moon has taken place, and where the Sun was in Cancer, and also the 0-9 degree mark for Mars as well. So there are 3 here that I would quickly like to run through. And so the first one is the Cancer 13 degrees, and it's a hand with a prominent thumb is held out for study. And the keynote here is the power of the will in shaping character. And it says, here again we see how a personal characteristic reveals what is behind it psychologically and spiritually. The thumb in palmistry signifies the will. A very rigid thumb shows an unbending will. A more flexible one, a more pliable individual. In the original formulation of the symbol, the hand was said to be slightly flexed, which may be taken to suggest a more flexible character. Nevertheless, the basic meaning is that individuality can only express itself through a strong character. Whenever this symbol confronts a person or a situation, it is shown that a strong will is required to face the issue at stake. And so this is where the Sun is in Cancer. This is the third stage in the 21st five-soul sequence, and the key word is character. And it's interesting because the sun is opposing the moon and the Capricorn energy. So it is kind of saying that we need this strong will, which is kind of something that came up within my reading itself as well. The will, the individual will versus the corporate will. So at the 13-degree mark of Capricorn, we have a fire worshipper meditates on the ultimate realities of existence. And the keynote is the subjective quest for ultimates beyond the interplay of life and death processes. So it says, beyond cultural enjoyment and the passion for accumulation of often unusable data of sense, knowledge stands the willful and determined adventure in consciousness of the occultist, the yogi, the mystic. The mystery of fire has always captured man's imagination because it is the mystery of all transformations, wrapped in the enigma of death. In times when collective, perhaps total death, could be in store for mankind, the process of subjective meditation is fascinating an even greater number of people. And I find that fascinating because this is kind of where we have been at with this Capricorn energy, this kind of clearing out of the physical as well as the kind of establishment as well. It's kind of, we are literally, with this pandemic, we have literally seen people dying in large amounts for one reason or another, whether it's been the illness itself or whether it's been something else that has kind of added to that. The death rate has been kind of very much focused on for quite some time now. So this is the third symbol in the 57th sequence. It brings us to a stage beyond life itself. Are we ready to take this step which the masters of yoga claim to have taken to experience death and return to the same body? Are we ready to demonstrate man's will to transcend, or to transcendence? Which is very interesting because I do feel that that's kind of where we are heading in some ways, is this transcendence beyond this Capricorn energy. Because otherwise we're just going to end up locked in this kind of physical battle. So the 9 degrees of Aries is a crystal gazer. And the keynotes is the development of an inner realization of organic wholeness. The crystal sphere symbolizes wholeness. Within the sphere, images take form. These images may reveal future events, but more significantly, they picture the situation as a whole. The situation which the clairvoyant is meant to interpret. The nascent mental faculties operating through still dominant emotions or collective cultural incentives act as a centralizing and whole-making power. What the intelligence perceives in its concentration is the function of every inner impulse and outer events in the open field of a personality still unclouded by egoism. And this is where we find Chiron at this time. So this fourth stage of the five-fold sequence, the new technique required for the development of individualized consciousness, is revealed in concentrated attention, which I also find interesting because that was kind of what I was saying about this trickster and this magician, this negative and this positive energy as well. It's kind of like, you know, we need to focus our attention on where we put our thought processes and focus on which one we want to create, where we are creating from and why we want to create it. will kind of bring us to a point of realization on some level. So that is where I'm going to leave that this astrology reading for today. I will just very quickly, I meant to do this earlier, but I will quickly show you these 3 cards. The first one being the Capricorn full moon, and it says the end of a rough cycle approaches. We have the South Node, which is all about the past and letting go, and it says don't let your past hold you back. And lastly, we have conclusions are within reach, and this is the full moon eclipse. So with these 3 cards together, I kind of feel that it's saying, you know, that this is a big shift of energies. This is something that we are moving away from, this Capricorn energy. We are going to be coming out of this hard, dense kind of reality that we've been living through for so long, and move into this kind of more transcendent kind of idea as we move into the Aquarian energy, as Saturn and Jupiter get into the Aquarian energy. So conclusions are within reach as well, which is a nice thing to know, that things are going to come to a conclusion here. So that is where I'm going to leave my astrology reading. I hope you have enjoyed it. Please, as I said, could you thumbs it up for me, like it, so that I can get it put out into the YouTube world, and so more people can see it, the algorithms pick it up, hopefully more people will come back to my channel, hopefully they will then subscribe to my channel as well, they can check out my videos. I do full moon, new moon videos. I also do when a major planet shifts its energy as well, tarot readings for that, and also I have everything in playlists as well, so for anybody who's interested in any of those videos, everything is playlisted. I also do all of the zodiac signs individually as tarot readings too. So please check out my channel if you haven't done already. And for those of you who have recently subscribed to my channel, thank you very much for helping me to grow it. I really do appreciate it. It does make me very happy when I see somebody new has subscribed to my channel. So also tap that bell so that you can receive the videos as and when I put them out. And on that note, I'm going to wish you all the best and say I hope this full moon in Capricorn is going to be kind to you, and please look after yourselves and look after anybody else who you are able to look after at this time. Take care. Hopefully see you again soon.